Greetings dear learners, this is Dr. Shamali Mandil and I am back with the fourth lecture of my 11th module. In the fourth lecture, I will be dealing with ethnography in my this module of preserving folklore. So, I will give you the very concept of ethnography and ethnographical research, fieldwork which is done in folklore for better understanding of the folk, customs, elements and everything. So, now I will proceed to the definition of what is ethnography. With its roots in anthropology, ethnography is a qualitative research approach that is widely used in the social sciences to examine cultures, groups and social activities through first-hand participation and observation. By immersing the researcher in the everyday lives, it seeks to comprehend how individuals live, perceive and interpret their surroundings. Ethnography is naturalistic, meaning it occurs in the actual environments where people live, work or interact as opposed to surveys or experiments. Participant observation, in which the researcher spends a considerable amount of time living among the community, observing behaviors, conducting in-depth interviews and keeping field notes, is the definition of ethnography. Remember, ethnographical research is actually, we can say, that when the person or the ethnographer or the researcher goes to the field and lives amongst the people. I have attached here a photo if you see, right. We have done mostly previously ethnographical studies of tribes, right. We have the very famous ethnographer called Clifford Geertz, who gives us the idea of how ethnography should be done. And now then I will be talking about more of Clifford Geertz when I talk about him in my ethnographer portion. The focus on reflexivity, in which researchers critically assess their own role, biases and influence on the research process, is one of ethnography's unique characteristics. In order to gain the trust of participants, ethnographers frequently integrate themselves into the community to a certain degree. This brings up significant ethical issues such as informed consent, confidentiality and cultural sensitivity. Ethnography is very personal and informative because of this intense participation. It enables a sophisticated comprehension of social environments, especially in situations that are obscured, disregarded or poorly comprehended by conventional methods. Notwithstanding its advantages, ethnography is criticized for being laborious, difficult to generalize results and being subjective. It is still an effective method for expressing the intricacy of human existence in its natural setting. Nevertheless, in domains like education, healthcare, urban studies, marketing and digital cultures, ethnographic research has proven crucial because it offers deep insights into how individuals perceive and navigate their surroundings. We have classic ethnographers like Elijah Anderson and Malinowski's studies of the Trobriand Islanders. Next, I am going to talk about two of the very famous ethnographers we have. One name I just mentioned, that is Clifford Geertz, who gave us the concept of thick description, and we also have Claude Lévi-Strauss, who gave us, a detailed study of how ethnographic research should be done in his book Mythologics. Clifford Geertz is known, as I said, for thick description, and I have attached a photo of Clifford Geertz here. And he introduced to highlight the importance of deeply contextualized cultural analysis. Rather than simply recording observable behaviors or rituals, Geertz argued that ethnographers must delve into the layers of meaning behind those actions, interpreting symbols, values and social structures from the insider's point of view. He viewed culture as a system of inherited conceptions expressed in symbolic forms through which people communicate, perpetuate and develop their knowledge about their attitudes toward life. And we can say, this ethnographical elements is very much dominant in the folk life, in the folk culture we can say. As I have said it from the very first lecture of my course, that folk is very collective. So, the interconnected bonds and the customs they share, the food they share is a very important part of ethnographical research. In text, like the interpretation of culture, Gids advocated for an interpretive approach rooted in the humanities rather than the positivist sciences. He treated ethnography as a literary and analytical craft that seeks to not understand what people do, but what those actions mean within that cultural context. Also, he gives us the two perspectives called the etic perspective and the emic perspective. And it shows, what is the etic perspective? The researcher's analytical interpretation. And what is the emic perspective? How insiders perceive their own culture. Usually structured or semi-structured, the fieldwork enables the researcher to modify their strategy in response to new information. The next I am going to talk about is our Claude Lévi-Strauss, who also is a very celebrated French anthropologist. Remember, ethnography is also a part of anthropology, as I have said in the definition, and they together, kind of becoming collective helps the researcher to gather more knowledge about a certain culture or about a certain tribe or about certain context. And he says, Lévi-Strauss says that, in especially cultural anthropology and folklore is very much in the social sciences domain, though, but it is still a part of humanities. In his article Social Structure, he gives us, that the best model is the one which accounts for all the facts and the reality. He gave us the concept of model formation influenced by structural linguistics, and he uses the Saussurean dichotomies, the langue and the parole, the paradigmatic and the syntagmatic, and the code and message. Each such code is a language and sum of all such codes in the culture. Lévi-Strauss develops his model using these dichotomies in order to examine social reality. His studies on kinship and totemism, two domains of social reality, using the structuralist method yielded much newer insights into the idea of social structure and the role of human one therein. However, we will confine our discussion only to the application of it. For example, Lévi-Strauss aimed to identify the underlying patterns and binary oppositions such as nature or culture, raw or cooked, and life-death that he believed governed myths, rituals, and kinship systems, in contrast to traditional ethnographic approaches that concentrated on direct observation and the documentation of cultural practices. In order to uncover universal patterns of human mind, he employed a strategy that involves examining stories and cultural symbols from various nations. He mostly worked on myths, and he saw, myths as intellectual instruments that assisted communities in reconciling inconsistencies in experience and thought, rather than as illogical tales. For instance, as I have said in his groundbreaking book Mythologics, he talks about the Native American groups, and he maintained that the human brain uses dichotomies to organize knowledge, and that cultural narrative serves as symbolic expressions of these oppositions. Thus, his anthropological approach was more concerned with linguistic structures, cognitive patterns, and comparative analysis than it was in fieldwork in the traditional sense. He gave us, you know, the ethnography which highlighted the unconscious mind's influence on cultural expression and establishing structural analysis as a crucial element in anthropological and ethnographical studies. Now, I will be talking about the application part, and one of the most important part of ethnography is the methodology of ethnography, how we can apply the ethnographical studies. And remember, whenever we do an ethnographical study, a field work, or you can say field research, not surveys, but field work and field research is a very important part. The three main streams of folk culture research are collection, compilation, and of course, you have to do a bit of survey for it. Of course, the place of collection comes first, because without the collection and compilation, the research is not possible. For a long time, you know, we understood folk culture practice as basically collecting and giving description of the collected materials, but even that collection was mostly flawed. It lacked objectivity or coherence. As a result, there were flaws in both collection and compilation. But now, as various methods have been gradually invented, we can humbly claim that we have been able to rise above that flaw to a great extent in the fields. According to famous, you know, ethnographers, the field research is of immense importance in folk culture research. Just as the role of the laboratory in scientific practice, the importance of field study in folk culture is also immense. Because if information is not collected in an objective manner, then folk culture research is bound to be disrupted. And what is the folk culture research we have? Collecting and studying the rhymes, riddles, proverbs, sayings or other materials of folk culture that are being created every day. However, first of all, remember, it is necessary not only to go to the people with whom the folk culture is concerned, but also to think of oneself as one of them, and also, you know, to be respectful towards the people and the culture. This is a very basic thing, you know, an ethnographer researcher should have. Because when we go for, you know, field research or field work, we say, we are not a part of the culture. We are the ones who go there for work, right? But we have to be a part of them. We have to understand them. We have to, you know, be cooperative with them. We have to, you know, make them participate in our research. Then only we can get the best result and the best collection from them. If the more involved they are, the more enriched our research will be. This is a very important thing, you know, we should remember while we conduct the field research. If we kind of, you know, treat them as, you know, like kind of inferior to us, okay, or you can say, you know, more like, you know, we are going them for the research. So, we normally do it, right, that okay, we are the ones who are better because we are doing research on them, but we should remember that without them, without the people, our research is incomplete. Nobody can do a research if they are not in lieu with the people on whom they are, you know, conducting the research. Means with the help of the people, it is forming a part of their research. So, the very first important thing is, I am repeating again, that when we are going to do an ethnographical research, we should be part of the culture and the people of whom we are doing the research on. As a result, the people also, if you are not doing this and, you know, and if you are doing only for a mere degree or material for writing a book, the people remain in the dark. Some show the lure of bringing them into the light of publicity, dream of getting many things, but in reality they do nothing. The price of this is paid by those who later go to the area for field study. The danger does not diminish. Remember, if you are an ethnographer or, you know, you are doing ethnographical research, the more better contact you create with the people, it helps you, and the others who are going after you. But once you have damaged the connection or the network, or you can say the relation with the people, the others who are going after you faces the consequence. Because once they start disbelieving you, they will start disbelieving the others even. So, it is very necessary to maintain a balance so that we can benefit from them and also the others who are going after us can also benefit from them. But when, remember, it comes to researching living people, their activities and their culture, as I said, one should not play the tricks. One should directly reach out to those about whom one wants to know or whose relationship one has with them. In research, dependence on priest is unsustainable. And as you know, we say, that dependence on lawyer is unsustainable in litigation. So, is the people who matters to us the most. Incidentally, it is worth mentioning that the main driving force of research is, the trust we create with them. In other words, the mentality of verifying the experiences of predecessors as much as possible without considering them as absolute truth. There has been a lot of discussion about field research. Many methods are in use, but mathematically, mechanically, field research is possible sometimes and also not possible sometimes. Why? Because every field researcher have their own perspective. For example, when you are researching on a certain tribe, or on certain area, you go with your perspective, with your questionnaire, with your ideas. I will discuss about questionnaires later. And your co-researcher or someone who is going to research after you has their own share of thoughts, their processes and also how they can make the most of it. As every human being is unique and individual, similarly, every field researcher is unique and individualistic. It is often seen, according to the field, that the person from whom the information will be collected, by questioning him or her, should be understood and the surroundings should be kept in mind. It is often seen that the method used in one field research, as I said, is obsolete in another field research and a new method needs to be followed. We should also abandon the mentality of home comfort or happiness in the field research. We should go to the field research with the mentality of adapting to all kinds of situations. All kinds of annoyances should be abandoned. If the researcher is alone in the field research, many problems are solved and sometimes it is not. Sometimes group research are of great help. Sometimes group research are also problematic. Sometimes individual research is very helpful because you are doing one-to-one interaction. Sometimes individual research also creates problem. Okay. So, every size has its advantages and disadvantages. But when we go for a field research as a member of a group, it is important to have a good relationship with everyone. It is inappropriate to get involved in disputes and over trivial matters like food and everything, which hinders the main purpose. Remember that the participants in field research should never wear expensive clothes or do major show off. They should also not be arrogant in their behavior. It should be remembered that most of the people from whom we are collecting the materials are very basic simple people. Okay. Therefore, if we go, as I said, if we go in expensive clothes, they might feel a bit inferior. If we kind of show off a lot, like speaking skills or our knowledge a lot, they kind of restrict themselves, which will actually hamper our research. Also, we might be stingy in providing necessary information. And we should not also get involved in political debates with informants during field research. The field researcher should not reveal his political ideology, whatever it may be, or be active in imposing it on the informants. The behavior of the field investigator should be free from all kinds of criticism, especially if there are female members. You should not behave in an indecent manner, because the people of the place where you go for field investigation takes care of everything. If the behavior is very indecent, the informants become resentful and they lack enthusiasm for providing information. It is inappropriate mostly to shout, laugh, joke, sing or have fun, okay, because it should not create any annoyances. In the hope of getting immediate benefits, the field investigators often show various temptations, as I said. For example, they will say that if you kind of perform in my research, I will give you connections for better earning, okay, or I will recommend your name somewhere so that you can earn more. So, these kind of temptations are given by the field researchers. Sometimes they are given to the people they are researching on, and if they are believing it, the people on whom we are doing the research on, they fall into traps sometimes, and it actually leads to danger and harm for the people and for the later researchers. So, we should be very cautious of what we are doing in a research, because we do not know when it might kind of backfire on us. Although the liars gain as some immediate benefits from this, later researchers, as I said, they face the serious problems. No one believes them, and also it is very difficult for the later researchers actually to again create that bond of trust and belief, because once they are as I said, they are breaking the belief, they have also trust issues in trusting the other researchers or the later researchers who are going after that. So, we should remember, we should be very careful when we are doing ethnographical research, because it is actually long term and our research not only benefits us, but also the society. Now, for the preparatory phase, it is important to select a suitable area for field research. It is necessary that wherever we are choosing, we get most of our information, and it is also important to collect information about the selected area and subject. Now, before going for research, we should also look into the administrative matters. There is a possibility of appearing as an unnecessary suspect to the local people by going to field research in unfamiliar places. So, you should keep your identity card with you. Also, you should write a letter to the Gram Panchayat or the local MLAs or public representatives, so that you can avoid untoward incidents. It should also be remembered that while going on a trip and going on a field research are not the same. In both cases, there is a change of place, but there is a change in difference in perspective even in the both cases. The field researchers should have necessary equipments like torch, diary, pad, pen, tape recorder, camera with him, and the most important thing, honesty. He will not distort the information obtained in the field research in any way. If he goes with the group, he will give all the information and materials obtained to the camp commander or team leader. He or she will not embezzle anything out of greed. The researcher in any subject knows the importance of field research, not only for verifying the previously obtained information, but when one goes for field research, many new ones come to hand. New horizons of research are open. Otherwise, the turning of the same thing continues, the same kind of research continues. Regular field research is therefore essential. Now, I will talk to you about some, you can say, definitions or some ideas of ethnographical field research. Instead of the anthropologist, an unknown folk culture expert can be placed, and it can be said that the folk culture expert also collects his necessary information through fieldwork. I will give you a very pertinent example in this case. When we kind of research, or we can say we interview the peasants, for example, or the folk artists, or you can say the folk cultural experts of a tribe actually, of a tribe or a place or area, we see that they have many knowledges, right, which are very much different from our textual knowledges, right, and also they know things better and they have experienced things better. Why so? Because they are living there. They know, for example, in folk medicine, if we do a research, we have the textual knowledge, right, that which herb or which plant, gives us what medicinal benefits. But the person who is, like following the folk medicines and applying it to his or her people have better knowledge on how it actually works. So, sometimes they are more helpful than our textual knowledge, and accordingly the folk cultural expert is of more importance, sometimes, or you can say most of the times, than our already previously based knowledges. The basis of any scholarly discipline is the material with which it deals, and without such materials there can be no subjects for scholarship. The materials can come only from the collection of folklore, using the term collector in the broadest sense possible. So, in the folk medicine example which I gave you, the person who is, applying the folk medicines is also a collector, right, and as you or me doing the research, we are also a collector. We are kind of doing the documentation part and they are kind of doing the application part. Also, the most important element in the scholarship of folklore is, these people. If the theoretical scholars of folk culture did not get the material, how would, we will be able to get our conclusions and explanations? The cook is able to cook only when he gets the necessary ingredients for cooking, as I said, and that is why the collector is important, and in case the decision will also be misleading if the informations are not provided. The study of folklore is based on field work or research, and folk culture practice and field research are inextricably linked. If one is excluded, the existence of the other becomes meaningless. In other words, the researcher and the field researcher are mutually dependent on each other. Now, there are different types of field research. There are many variations. For example, we have interviewing, observation, writing a list of questions, collecting answers, okay, and others we have. Because in field research, one has to pay attention to so many subtleties that it is difficult to capture even through a table. Therefore, we offer few words about the importance and method of field research, and in the case it is first necessary, as I said, to select the region or regions where information can be found about the element of folk literature or culture. Going to those places and setting up shelters is also necessary. But where is the place? Okay, that is the place which the people provide us. Okay, and it is also necessary to find people who can provide information about the material about which information is to be collected, and they are called the field friends. Field friends help the researcher in collecting information, and also there should be a direct connection between the field friends and the specific population, and sometimes people from the region also come forward to help the researcher indirectly. However, it should always be noted that a mental bridge should be built between the correspondent and the surveyor. And before the survey, the surveyor should also, or the collector should also verify the correspondent in various ways. Because remember always that wrong or distorted information can foil the plan. In this method, we also have the conclusive method. After collecting the information, it is properly classified according to the purpose of the research. Then it is displayed with the help of graphic designings. And what are the process we have in the field method? We have observation, we have interviewing, we have collecting information on a specific area through a questionnaire, and a detailed discussion. So, when you go for a field research, you should remember one thing, that every person cannot give you information, okay, but they actually help you out. How? That if you are going to a certain person and asking some questions, that person might not know about it, but obviously that person will give you links and cues so that you can go to the person who has the knowledge and carry your research. So, trust is the most important thing in this process, and you cannot believe on everybody's version. because the knowledgeable ones can only give you the correct information and how you can proceed with your field research. If you get one wrong cue, your field research is marred. If you get one wrong information, the whole discussion and the conclusion is just futile. It is worth mentioning that there are two types of observation. One is the uncontrolled one and the other one is the controlled one. It is also that sometimes the uncontrolled but participant observation is more important than the uncontrolled non-participatory observation. We also have interviews, and I will give you 4 types of how interviews can happen. One is the non-directive interview, the second one directive interview, third one integrated interview, and the fourth one is in-depth interview. All methods have their pros and cons. Okay? If the interview is free of instructions, the interviewer can present his or her point of view more spontaneously. In a directive interview, that does not happen, in which case the interview becomes more or less mechanical. On the other hand, in an open interview without instructions, the interview phase suffers from directionlessness. It is not helpful in achieving the goal. The interviewee has no control, the interviewer controls the whole thing. And coming to the next part, that is the questionnaire based interview is also happening in 2 types. One is the unstructured and the another one is the structured. The questionnaire based interview in the unstructured part has also 2 parts, the open end and the close end. Questionnaires are currently the most widely used in field research, because in this method the researcher gets the information that is specific to him or her. Otherwise, in the practical field research, one has to face discomfort about what questions to ask and how to start. And we should always prepare like a sample of questionnaire, okay? And what we should prepare in the questionnaire, what we like if you just go and ask someone randomly, that person will not be comfortable to you, right? So, what you need to do first, it is a very basic thing. You go to a person in a field work or a research, you ask that person the name, the age, the caste sometimes, the class, the gender, you can see it is a male or a female. Also why that person is like doing something, okay, what is the occupation, okay, who are there in the family, how they are doing their livelihood, what is their lifestyle, how long they have been staying there, everything, every information is useful in a field research. And then we should start with our specific questions. Okay, I will give you an example of how how we are doing a field research on one of the topics in my next slide. So, when we are doing that, you have to be first of all do the comfortable part with the you can say the person, and then you start questioning the specific ones. So, in a way the person with whom you are interviewing becomes more comfortable and starts answering you more positively. The more vague answers they give, the more time waste happens, and then you just have you end your time and you do not get the necessary information. So, it is very necessary to make a questionnaire. Our long standing idea also is there that the elderly people know the most, but now the idea has been abandoned. Experience has shown that it is unreasonable to make any distinction between women and men of the same age in collecting material related to culture. The best procedure is to talk both men and women, young and old, to observe wide range of persons in as many situations as possible. Recently, students, researchers and others from the social sciences, including folk culture, have been going out on field research for a very long time. Sometimes it is 4 to 5 days or sometimes it is a week. And sometimes the field research is organized as a part of the curriculum. Therefore, due to practical reason, a long time is not spent on field research. Therefore, also experts have specified a minimum period for field research. And if you go on doing field research, it is not possible to complete your work in the academic level. And that is why, you should do some research, do get a conclusion, and then again, kind of you see your shortcomings, you again go for a research, okay, the field one, you again collect some material, and then you form your thought process. The importance of collecting undistorted limited data is much greater than the abundance of distorted information. So, this what we should remember as is the field researcher should specify the objective or problem, should give the necessary time to understand, maintain contact with informants, also communication with local teachers, and also must be hardworking, and also should be collective and collect more data in lesser time. Now, I am going to talk about one of the very important, you can say, aspect of folk culture we have, and also I will give you one example, okay, of a folk goddess, and you can say a vrat or a vow which is followed throughout India, and how a field researcher can actually work on it. Okay. For example, we have the Mansa Puja. Okay. The Mansa Puja, we know that Mansa is a folk goddess, the goddess of serpents, and this falls on the 5th day of the bright half of Shravan, okay, the 5th month of the Hindu year. Now, it is known as Nag Panchami throughout India, okay, and it is also known as Monasha Pujo we say in Bengal. Okay. This vrat is mostly observed on Tuesday or Saturday in the months of Bhadra and Shravana, and you can say what do the vratini do, the one who is doing the vow? She should worship a picture or clay statue of a cobra and a tree branch placed in a pitcher. Okay. Saucers of milk are placed by snake holes as offerings, and there is no digging or ploughing of the earth on that day. The vratini should also abstain from cutting and grinding you can say food during also during the field work which the ethnographers have done earlier, like when we went actually to ask a woman how that woman does the Mansa Puja, or you can say the Nag Panchami. She kind of give us a detail actually, okay, that how she is doing the Mansa Puja. That is first of all she is setting up the goddess, okay, on a pedestal, then she is doing the offerings, the rituals we say, and then reading the Vrat Katha, okay, or you can say the tale which is associated with the Mansa Puja. Okay. So, that is the basic thing which they do. And what is the role of an ethnographer here? The role of an ethnographer is, or a researcher is, a field researcher is, that you go to the person, to a woman, you ask that woman, right, take notes of it, okay, that how she does it, click photographs of it, of you have, you can say photos, you can show that you have done the research, and also it actually helps that how the process is being done. Okay. And then you come back, you go to another woman, ask about maybe the same vrat or some different vrat the woman is doing, again do the same process with the questionnaire, ask questions, collect material, collect photos of it, and then include it in your research. I will give you, a certain you can say study of one of the researchers. For example, the women whom we met during our field research narrated the ritual where she placed a Mansa plant pot on top of an earthen pot or a piece of soil. So, what is the Mansa plant in normally it is the cactus, okay, the Indian cactus, alright. She did with the Indian cactus. She put it on a pedestal and worshipped it as Ma Monasha. Okay. So, you can imagine, right, these are the things you get to know when you go for a field research, right, that worshipping the cactus tree, the Indian cactus tree as the symbol of Ma Manasa. She prepares a bowl filled with raw milk and keeps it on a plate with the sugar meringues, the parched rice, bananas and coconuts, and then she worships the pots with flowers, wood apple leaves, and it is said that snakes cannot bear the smell of incense. She then turns her back towards the goddess and offers flowers, and she reads the Vrat Katha. which is what is the Vrat Katha? The Vrat Katha is the story of Chand Saudagar. It begins with the story of a widow. Okay. Also, there is another story actually, which of a widow who had 5 sons and 5 daughters-in-law. The 4 elder daughters-in-law would sometimes deceive gifts and jewelry and everything, and the younger daughter-in-law, what she did, okay, she worshipped Ma Monasha, okay, and fed small snakes actually with milk. So, Ma Monasha's vehicle, as she is a serpent goddess, she got appeased and she showered that young daughter-in-law with gifts which no one can imagine. Okay. So, remember the tail which is attached with it, it actually shows you, the good things, why you should follow the Vrat. Okay. It is simple as that. And if you follow the Vrat, if you do, if you please Ma Monasha, she will shower you with gifts. That is how it happens. That is what is mentioned in the Vrat Katha. Remember, Monasha has a dual aspect as the death dealing and life giving goddess, carrying poison in one eye and the nectar of immortality in the other. So, from our field research, we get to know that Monasha has a dual aspect as the death dealing and life giving goddess, carrying poison in one eye and the nectar of immortality in the other. The cult of Monasha is prevalent all over the vast region of undivided Bengal, and the rites relating to the worship of Monasha have variations in different parts of Bengal, but the basic elements are almost the same. And there is 2 types of worship. One is the daily worship in the permanent shrine of Monasha and the annual worship. The permanent shrine is mostly temples made with mud walls and covered with straws in the villages. And we have the permanent abodes, which are uncovered altars under the Monasha tree, which is the Euphorbia lingurea. These abodes are called the Monasha Tola, and the place of Monasha, which are invariably public places, usually by the sides of the main road. And it is believed that the deity is also associated with fertility. Remember, Monasha was the daughter of sage Kashyap and the sister of the serpent king Vasuki. She was married to Jarutkaru, depicted as sheltered by the canopy of the woods of 7 cobras, sitting on a lotus and having a child on her lap, Astik. Also in some stories, she is Shiva's illegitimate daughter, born from his semen which fell on a leaf while he was meditating on the banks of a lotus pool. The semen flowed down the stem of the plant and reached Patal, where Monasha was born and brought up by the serpent mother Kodru and granted sovereignty over them. Okay. And we also have the very famous Chand Saudagar story, which shows and which was written by Ketokadash Khemananda, and the story revolves how a wealthy merchant and his long life struggle with the goddess. Monasha approached Chand Saudagar to worship her so that she could establish herself in the pantheon of gods and goddesses. But Chand Saudagar, being a Saivite, refused to worship Monasha. And we can say this is also a mark of the struggle of decaying Shaivism of Bengal against the growth of Shaktism represented by the Monasha cult. And then we have the story, how the younger daughter-in-law Behula actually made her father-in-law worship Monasha. Now, I will be talking about the pan-Indian approach we have to this Monasha Pujo. As I said, this Monasha Pujo is also known as Nag Panchami in throughout India. It has it falls on the same day, maybe one day later or before, because we have a different calendar, but the worship more or less remains the same. And I will tell you about the Nag Panchami and the snake rituals which happens in South India. So, in Nag Panchami, it is mostly associated in other areas of India with Krishna's conquest of the great river snake Kaliya, which is called the Kaliya Daman. For 4 evenings from the new moon of Shravan, women and girls after their evening meal gather according to their caste in several centers, and they spend a long evening until about midnight singing the special songs of the festival. On the Panchami morning pictures of Nag are drawn on the walls with colored chalks, or in Brahmin families with sandalwood paste on a path. the broad, very loose tool used for dining. Also, in Tamil Nadu, we have the snake worship, and it was called that Naga Devata, the serpent deity, was living, in the ant hills and the sacred groves. During the Tamil month of Adi, Nag Panchami is one of the most important snake worshipping rites. And the stone statues are known as Nagakal, okay, as you can see in the photo, which are frequently positioned beneath people or neem trees. Devotees present milk, turmeric and other offerings, and they draw elaborate columns too. And many temples honor snake deities, the Sarpadosha Nivaran Puja which we have. And this is especially true of temples dedicated to Subramania, Murugan, like the well known Palani Murugan temple and the Kukke Subramaniam temple. The existence of stone carvings of snakes in temple grounds or mural shrines, which may go back hundreds of years, is a distinctive feature of snake worship in Tamil Nadu. Snakes are regarded divine signs, and families with a snake worship tradition may install their own Nagakal during auspicious times. Thus, firmly inspired, in the spiritual psyche of its people, the snake ceremonies or the snake rituals are an imbibed part of our Hindu devotion. Now, I come to the end of the fourth lecture of this module, and what I have tried to do here, I have tried to give you the methods of ethnographic research, and even I have given you an example of how we can apply ethnographic research on the Manasa Puja, also known as Nag Panchami throughout India, and they have different variations. So, when a field researcher is working in Bengal, he or she gets to know about the Manasa. When a field researcher is working in South India, he or she gets to know about the snake rituals. And when he or she is working, in other parts of India, he or she gets a knowledge about the Nag Panchami. So, the field research is important in, you can say, in any folk culture, because it gives us a varied idea, we can say a pan idea of one only goddess, and in this case I have given you Manasha, and we can say the serpent deity, but it is applicable to every other gods, or you can say every other works we can say. So, it is it actually gives us a varied area perspective when you do field research, and mostly ethnographical field research. Thank you and see you in my next lecture.